What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Playbook Sports Podcast as we continue our off-season series where we go through and we grade every single move that your team has made this off-season, from coaching changes to free agency, additions and losses, all the way down to your draft, and then we tie it all up neatly at the end with a grade. Today's team, we are talking about the Cleveland Browns, and we're going to start at the top because it's quick and easy. Coaching changes, there's not any. Kevin Stefanski's back for his 5th season. And honestly, you guys, you got to feel kind of bad for him. Truthfully, you really do. I think he's done well with what he's been given on the offensive side of the ball. Management put everything they had, every single chip that they had, they put it into a quarterback that was suspended for his first season, 11 games into his second season with them, or Deshaun Watson, he missed the entire first season, suspended 11 games his second season, and then he's only been healthy for 13 of the past 34 games. He's missed 21 other games with injury. That's brutal when he signs the highest guaranteed contract of all time, and you're telling your head coach, this is your quarterback. You have to play him. And not only does he stink in the games he plays, but he barely plays anyways. I mean, that's just a rotten hand to be dealt. So you got to feel for Stefanski. I think he's a really good coach. If he ever loses his job, I would be more than happy to welcome him on my team, as I think most people should. Looking at free agency here, let's go ahead and start on the offensive side of the ball where there's not a ton here. Free agency offensive addition I've got for you is Joe Flacco. 1 year, $4.25 million. And offensive loss, I've got quarterback Jameis Winston. I think this one's neutral. I'm going to keep this one neutral too, and you can't convince me otherwise. I appreciate what both of these quarterbacks have to offer, and honestly the kind of niche role that they've developed in the NFL. Obviously, Flacco was a very good starter for the Ravens 30 years ago. Now he's 40 years old, and you cannot count on him to be a starter. You just can't. He's great when he has to come in off the bench. He's a great reliever, terrible starter. And I would say the same thing for Jameis Winston. If he can come in off the bench and light it up a little bit and have some fun, which he's one of the best personalities in the NFL by a mile. But if both these guys, solid backup quarterbacks that you'd feel okay playing in a pinch, if you're like, shoot, we lost our quarterback, we need a guy to go out there and sling it, they're great for that. But if they're your starting quarterback, especially going into the year, you're not happy about that. You can't be. So we're going to say the offense stays neutral here. I'm not going to count Deshaun Watson again in the quarterback room. So really you lost one of your starting quarterbacks last year for your starting quarterback this year. So neutral. Defensively, not much either. They didn't do a whole lot this free agency, guys. They added Malik Collins to the defensive line on a 2-year, $20 million deal. And then they added Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, rotational edge rusher, 1 year, $4.75 million deal. And then they lost Dalvin Tomlinson. So I'm going to go neutral here as well on the defensive side of the football. Replacing Tomlinson with Malik Collins is, in my opinion, a little bit of a step back in terms of talent. I think Dalvin Tomlinson is just better than Malik Collins, but is he that much better? Not really. Not to a point where I'm like, oh, they're going to be worse this year. And I think Tryon-Shoyinka kind of makes up that small gap. Good rotational edge rusher. Not a difference maker, not somebody I'm like, this guy's a double-digit sack guy. Absolutely not. You don't expect to play him that much. But another guy that's just like, okay, good to have as a rotational piece, I suppose. So offensively, defensively, throughout free agency, I'm just keeping it completely neutral. I don't see a clear-cut improvement, and I don't see any real clear-cut downgrade. So even. Let's talk about their draft, and we're going to start, obviously, they had a big draft. I really do. I like their move down. They traded out of number 2, moved down to pick number 5, picked up an extra second rounder this year and a fourth rounder this year, plus the Jaguars' first next season. And I still think they got one of the best 4 players in this draft in Mason Graham. If you go back and watch my big board video that I released with Addison and Bobby, I think Mason Graham was 3 or 4 for me. Like, he was way up there. I think he was 4. I think I went Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter, Ashton Jeanty, Mason Graham. So one of the best players in this class. You get him after moving back. I think they would have been okay with him at 2. Obviously, fans wanted Travis Hunter, but whatever. I really like the Mason Graham pick. Really, really solid defensive lineman. I think he's got a ton of upside, and he's got a high floor, too. He's going to be impressive on day 1. Then they added Carson Schwarzenegger, one of the best linebackers in this class. I had him at 3rd. I had him just slightly behind Demetrius Knight, and definitely both of them were behind Jahad Campbell, in my opinion. But I like Carson Schwarzenegger. I really think he can carve out a nice little role in this defense. Love their running back additions in both Quinshon Judkins and Dylan Sampson. Both of these guys can break off huge runs. They've got excellent speed. I think that they're both going to be, I think they're going to be a great two-headed running back monster for the Browns. And I know it's sad that Nick Chubb is gone, but you couldn't continue to rely on him to come back and be Nick Chubb of old. And you can't just keep throwing out Jerome Ford. I'm sorry, Jerome, but that doesn't move me at all. You cannot just keep throwing him out there. Put someone with some explosiveness back there. And they did that 2 times over with Quinshon Judkins and Dylan Sampson. I wish they would have gone to each separate team so they both could have been starters. But I love them together. I think they're going to be really good. And then obviously they had 2 big picks in the 3rd round and 5th round in going with quarterback out of Oregon, Dylan Gabriel, in the 3rd round, and quarterback Shedeur Sanders out of Colorado in the 5th round. I just want to get this out there, get ahead of this. Should Sanders have been available in the 5th round? No, he should not have. Was I in there for his interviews? No, I wasn't. Did the Sanders family threaten to sue teams for releasing his interviews? That was reported. So it must have been pretty rough. I don't know what he said. I don't know. I wasn't there. I don't even want to speculate on what he could have said. But I don't think that he should have dropped all the way to the 5th round. That is crazy to me, especially when you look around the NFL, teams that need young quarterbacks. Like, the kid's talented. He's a talented player. And he fell to the 5th round. The Browns picked Dylan Gabriel over him. They had a choice in the 3rd round. They said, we can go with Dylan Gabriel. Shedeur Sanders is still here. What do you want to do at quarterback? And they said, we want Dylan Gabriel. I don't really think there's a whole lot of a quarterback competition. And if you're trying to argue that Shedeur Sanders is going to be the starting quarterback for them, I don't know what drugs you're on, but I think you should probably stop taking them because there's just no way that they draft Dylan Gabriel 2 rounds ahead of Shedeur Sanders and then, a couple of practices, and they're like, oh boy, were we stupid, and we made a huge mistake in taking Dylan Gabriel 2 rounds ahead of him. We should have just taken Shedeur Sanders way earlier. No. And I didn't even mention Kenny Pickett, who's also on the roster, but again, that just shows what kind of a role I think he's going to play. See you later, buddy. There's the door. So I don't think either of these quarterback selections are long-term guys. I just want to throw that out there. I don't think Dylan Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders have what it takes to be franchise quarterbacks in the NFL. And based on where they were drafted, it seems like most NFL teams would agree with that assessment. However, that being said, I think their overall draft, taking 2 bites at the quarterback apple is not a bad strategy at all. Getting 2 young, explosive running backs in your room to inject some youth into it is excellent strategy. And then going and getting 2 guys who are going to make a difference on your defense pretty early, especially in Mason Graham, who's already considered a starter on their depth chart, I think they drafted very, very well. Looking at their depth chart, however, and talking about needs, let's start with my secondary need, and that's a second edge rusher, like a lot of teams in the NFL, apparently. They don't have anybody on this defense that scares you outside of Myles Garrett. I guess you're hoping maybe Mason Graham develops into an excellent pass rusher, but even so, he's a defensive tackle, not an edge rusher. You don't have a whole lot of guys that can really push the pocket and put pressure on the opposing quarterback, which means Myles Garrett, as it has been his entire career, will be doubled and triple teamed the entire game, so he won't be quite as effective as he could be. Man, imagine if they could have gotten Abdul Carter. Oh, wait, they could have. They chose to trade down and take Mason Graham. Abdul Carter and Myles Garrett together on the same defensive line would have fed families in Cleveland for a generation, and they chose not to do that. Fine, but it's a hole nonetheless. And then obviously the biggest hole on this roster, on the Cleveland Browns roster, ever since Baker Mayfield left after one good season, is the quarterback position. I don't see a starting quarterback in that room. I see Kenny Pickett, who is a first-round complete bust. I see 40-year-old Joe Flacco, who's only good if he's coming in off the bench because your starting quarterback got hurt. And then I see 2 young quarterbacks who neither of them are starters, especially not this season. They were taken in the 3rd and 5th round, and I just don't see anything here. And then you have Deshaun Watson still, who you're still paying an exorbitant amount of money to, who will not play most of this season in what has quickly become one of, if not the worst sign and trade deals of all time. I'm sure Cleveland fans cannot wait for him to be out of their franchise. He has been nothing but bad luck ever since he came there. Cleveland, I'm sorry, you can't win without a quarterback. You cannot win in this league without a good quarterback. You don't have it, you're just not going to win. That's okay. Maybe you're setting yourself up for something great next year in the draft. There's better quarterback prospects, in my opinion. I think you probably gave yourself extra ammunition in next year's draft for that exact reason. So Browns fans, don't despair. It's going to be okay. You'll get through this. You just need Deshaun Watson out of your franchise, and you need to figure it out at the quarterback position. So overall, for their offseason moves, again, I just spent a lot of time trashing them. I think they've done fine. I give them a B- for their overall offseason moves. They didn't outspend their talent level. They didn't go out and get a splashy player, even though they are not close to contention. They didn't waste their money. They paid Myles Garrett what he wanted and kept him in-house, and I think that was really smart because he was, without a doubt, the fan favorite on this football team. I can't even think of anybody who's even in the same stratosphere as him. If you let him walk or traded him, Browns fans would not show up to the games. Because why would you? I mean, you would, but why would you? So I think they've made some smart moves. I'm glad they kept Stefanski. I don't think he's the problem. They haven't answered all the questions, and they're very clearly, in my opinion, the fourth best team in that division, and it's not very close. But they're also too good to be considering rebuilding. They're a weird spot, right? It's a weird spot. I'm going to stick with a B- for them, and we're going to move on. So that's all I've got for you guys on today's offseason grade video for the Cleveland Browns. We'll see you guys in the next one.